started.
Oh, RKN. Okay. E4. Let's try a Sicilian. Let's do a normal Sicilian. I've been playing the E6 Sicilians as well. But let's go back to the classical. And that would be with D6. Yeah, I moved that knight out instead of pushing the pawn. But this can still transpose into a classical Sicilian. But the way I played it, it allows him to play C5 and get him Roxy bind, so that wasn't wasn't very accurate of me. What did I play? I played C5 and knight C6, yeah. Normally knight C6 introduces other ideas besides just D6. Like the Sveshnikov and the Kalashnikov, but I don't play those so much. So I should have played D6 there and saved the knight C6 move for later. But now I've sort of transposed back into a normal classical Sicilian like I was going for. With the two knights out, pawn on D6. In this position, yeah, I can even go with the fianchetto of the bishop and set up a structure similar to a dragon Sicilian without having to worry about this opposite side castling and the raging attack. This knight here is pretty safe, I think. The bishop doesn't really want to take it. There may be some uncomfortable pressure on the e-file, so anyway, but getting out of the e-file with the king is a good idea. I can take here with the pawn. So the pawn push does not accomplish anything at the moment, it seems. Okay, well, I played those too fast too. Look at my time. Oh well, maybe I will recover. I mean, nothing bad seems to have gone wrong, but I'm not playing right. Knight to e5, hitting the bishop. Looks interesting. Knight to b4. Let's just bring the rook to the c file first, though. And bishop wasn't doing a whole lot on b5, but it doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot on d3 either. It's hitting this pawn over here. I guess it leaves me with a question of how to develop. I guess knight e5 to c4 is the usual one of the ideas here. Okay, he doesn't want to trade the bishop. I can just leave the knight there and maybe push on with b5 to b4. Maybe expose an attack to this pawn here. Maybe you can see queen c7, b5 would win the pawn on c2. He's moved his king out of the way, so he can play f4 here. He didn't do that. Okay, he wants to stop me from playing b5. Yeah, I guess chasing this knight away also would have loosened this e-pawn, which the bishop blocked the rook's view of the e-pawn. His king side looks a little weak. Is there something over here? What's defending this pawn? Nothing. Well, maybe this is a useful move. Just get the queen out. Tickle that pawn, see if it wants to come forward. If he goes to... Oh, he just defends with the bishop. Yeah, that's logical. Okay, let's drop back. I could try to go a5, b4, but the a pawn is always... the b pawn is loose. When I play a5, he takes b5. Got the knight and the bishop on it. So, anyway, he's chasing this knight away, but I've got this square on on c4 that looks good. He can either take it with the light squared bishop or let me take the dark squared bishop, or he could retreat the dark squared bishop back to c1. that also defends b2, which needs defending. The knight's hitting the b2. Okay, so he decides to take it off. Now, I can keep the c-file open by taking with the queen. I think that's the usual way to play it. If I take with the pawn, this knight would have to move, but it has squares. It could go to d4 even. So let's take with the queen. And the knight can kick the queen, but the queen can drop back. The queen sits there. I suppose I could consider playing b4 right here. Pawn takes, queen takes. But those knights seem pretty solid there still. Okay, I'm looking at the e-pawn too. Okay, he goes forward with the e-pawn. So I take, he takes, and my bishop is hanging if the knight moves away. Yeah, that's interesting. Pawn takes, pawn takes. Do I have some knight move that's useful? Knight here, he can just take it. Knight here, he takes the bishop. Do I have a bishop move that's useful? Not so obvious. Let's see. If I retreat the knight, he can take. I can take back, and that also opens up this diagonal, which might be good. So let's just retreat. So I'm just thinking pawn takes, d6, pawn takes, because that's protected by the knight. And then the bishop is unleashed on this diagonal. And this pawn is still pinned because this bishop here is now loose on d7. So maybe if he doesn't do anything, maybe I should just move the bishop. Bishop could go to e6 here. Ah, he's going after the pawn. Yeah, that's not bad. Knight here. Yeah, that's and knight to e7 check picks up the exchange here. Hits the rook. So I can grab a pawn. He goes check, I move the king, he takes the rook. And I take back, but my queen is hanging. Okay, so if I move the rook away, so I just lose a pawn, where should the rook go? So rook c6 maybe, rook c6, but then he's got knight a5, forking the queen and the rook. Yeah, it's a little bit off. I'm rooked here. He's got bishop to, if rook d8, he's got bishop to b6. So maybe rook b8 by the process of elimination. And I hope I didn't overlook anything. This loses a pawn, but I didn't see any way to save it. And his c-pawn is a little bit weak.
Check.
And maybe I can take maybe I can take this e-pawn if he doesn't do anything. Still have to worry about this loose bishop here. Let's see, if he plays pawn takes, then I do have bishop takes b2. Pawn takes d6, bishop takes b2. Then what? Rook b1, I guess. Hitting the bishop, and bishop retreats. He's still up a pawn after all that. The bishop could go here hitting that rook. And then maybe this bishop comes in hitting the other pawn. I might get some play here. Okay, well, he's pausing to think. Let's see what happens. And I keep thinking this knight is loose if he moves the c-pawn, but actually the queen, where it is, defends the knight. So if this pawn actually can come forward, and the queen still defends it. But if I were to play something like bishop f5 to c2, that would win the knight, because it's a fork. Unless he plays rook c1, pinning the bishop. And I take the queen, he takes the queen, I take the rook. Well, that's still good. Okay, so he took the pawn. So I'm going to go bishop takes b2, I think. I don't see anything better. And then where's the knight going? Nowhere great. Bishop can't yet come into here. My pieces are a bit tied up, but the bishop is now safe anyway. So let's get a pawn back. Oh, I guess I'm hitting the a pawn here. Maybe I can take on a3 and then pile up on d6 and undermine this knight here. This strong knight outpost is kind of annoying.
Check.
Oh, that looks unfortunate. So the bishop is loose here, so I have to trade. And if he takes with the queen, I don't have to trade, but if I block, he could trade. But then this pawn on d6 is falling at the end. Say queen takes, knight takes d6, and I get my pawns back. And I'm looking okay, I think, unless there's a tactic at the end of that. There'll be 2 pieces and 2 rooks against 2 pieces, 2 knights and 2 rooks. Yeah, there may be some tricky knight moves. I always got to watch out for those when the 2 knights are raging on the board.
Check.
Yeah, let's just take it. And then take the pawn. And then where is this knight going? Here, 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 here. This knight coming here, here, here. Yeah, so they can coordinate on this b6 square, which is a little bit unfortunate, and then maybe a rook skewer. So knight takes pawn, knight here, bishop takes, knight takes. Ah, that undoes the skewer. Then I move my rook to the corner or here, and then if he attacks my knight, I have time to save it. I was just worried about a skewer on this file here, but the only way for him to clear it with tempo that I see is for the knight to go here to c6, and then I can trade. So he doesn't get to take advantage of this temporary alignment of my pieces. And my pawns are controlling these squares, so this guy is not invading except on c6, and then I would just trade it off. And then move my rook to safety. Maybe even over here. And if my knight is attacked, I can move my knight to safety. So he retreats that knight, okay. Now where is he going? He's got the dark square over here hitting the bishop. He's got this square. Let's see, what do I have? I can start unwinding. This bishop doesn't have a whole lot of moves, does it? Anyway, let's get this knight to an outpost. Maybe king to g7 next to stop the knight from coming to f6 would be useful. Yeah, he went there right away. So he's hitting the bishop. Bishop can go here or here. Yeah, the bishop is just short on squares. If I drop back here, if the bishop goes to c8, his rook can invade on e7. but then my bishop can come out here. I think things are still together. And I want to keep that bishop rather than trading it for knight. And also, if I move the bishop out to these squares, he would take, and it would kind of mess up my pawn. So I'd rather keep the better pawn structure if I can. So keeping the bishop and keeping the better pawn structure go together, but now his rook can activate. I'm a little worried about that. But the e6 square is covered, so he can't harass this pawn. This is one of my weak pawns over here on a6. But it can go, the rook can go to this square, e7. And then bishop b7. The bishop can come out along this diagonal. Those two knights are sort of dominating this one bishop. He's running down his time. That's a bit unfortunate for him. Okay, so he just drops that knight back. Maybe he wants to enter here. Let's harass this knight first. That'll gain me a tempo, and then move the bishop somewhere. Now I have more squares to move it to. I can come out on this diagonal. Target this pawn over here, maybe. And if that knight goes onto this diagonal, maybe I can skewer these knights. Or bishop to f5, hitting the pawn. Yeah, so I went here. Well, it's not exactly a skewer. Both knights are defended. So bishop f5, he can play g4. Bishop takes, rook takes. So let's put it here. Let's see. He can harass the bishop with knight to one of these dark squares, but I can take his knight. Okay, he defended. So where is he attacking? He's attacking these light squares. Let's kick it back. I don't like it there. So close to my king and putting pressure on e7. So let's pile up on this guy. Get my other rook active. And maybe go after this pawn. I've kind of tied up his rook by attacking the a pawn. Okay, I can now take the knight and then go after those doubled pawns with my knight. And so it'll be an even, materially even game, but with some chances here. Is that the best move here? Can I go after that pawn instead? Pawn here. This pawn could come forward. I could go here, but that just provokes a trade. If I go here, he just defends. Yeah, it's not so easy to defend, is it? He defends with his king, I guess. Okay, he goes for the trade. So yeah, material even, but I have he has 4 pawn islands, doubled pawns, and so I should be able to activate my rook and get in there and pick off some pawns. That's my theory here about this position. And of course, if he just lets me take a pawn, I will take it unless I'm getting trapped here. Oh, he can attack it with the king. I didn't think about that. The rook is guarding these escape squares. The knight can come here, check, and pick up this pawn, right?
Check.
Should have thought about that, though. Gotta make sure your pieces don't get trapped. Now this a pawn is under attack again. Okay, so he activates his rook. Let's just grab more pawns, though. I think I'm okay here. I think it is safe to do that. And what's the best way to handle this? If I push the pawn forward and get my rook behind it, maybe that's good. Get your rook behind the passed pawn and just push it home. let's get the knight out of the way. When I pushed the pawn forward, I didn't want to lose the knight. Although it might have worked anyway. Yeah, it depends on how close. Now his knight was close enough to stop it. Sometimes you just sacrifice a piece in order to get that queen. Wouldn't have worked in this case, but okay, he's real low on time. Wondering whether to sacrifice the knight for the pawn. I made the time control. Okay, so I have this check here. I have this pawn coming forward. Wow, he's good. He's making all of these moves just in time. So if I go here and queen, he takes, I take, and then he takes the knight. So let's save the knight. Ah, here we go.
Check.
That's the way to do it.
White resigned.
Wow, he resigned with 0-0 on his clock. That's pretty good. Just in time. Okay, good game. I will upload this and do a postmortem. See you guys later. Bye.